this week's flagship episode of the 20 Minute Tim's Celtic podcast. I'm your host Jamie, joined by Melly.
Yes.
And Stephen.
Hello.
Not quite as enthusiastic a yes from Melly there as the first take.
We lost the magic of the first take, didn't we?
It was one for the ages. That maybe we can edit it in because I don't want people to miss out on it. Listen, last time we were here, we said that we set a target, 1,600 patrons. That's what we wanted to hit at Christmas time. Now, we've sweetened the deal a little bit. If you watch this podcast in video form and you think, I want to watch it uninterrupted from adverts as God intended, then you can do that by now signing up to our Patreon. All patrons get an ad-free version of this video podcast. And if you don't want to do Patreon and you're quite happy with YouTube and that's all you want, you can also join the YouTube membership where we'll be putting ad-free video on there as well. So we've sweetened the deal. We're doing everything we can, and we think that's pretty good because that's the way God intended it.
If we get a certain amount of patrons as well, what we could spring for as well, we see now Sky Sports at the end of the transfer window, they do the totalizer, big massive screen telling you how much the teams have paid for transfers. We'll get the number of patrons up behind me, so it's just constantly ticking up towards 10,000 eventually.
What if it gets to 1689?
Yeah. We want 1690 patrons by New Year's Day. That's what we want. Now, boys, speaking of setting targets and meeting them, hopefully, Brendan Rodgers set Matt O'Reilly the target of scoring more goals, and he seems to have done that wonderfully.
Good target, that, isn't it? Because every time he goes to Brendan, how am I doing now, boss? He can just say, want more.
More.
Just more, not a number, I just want more. It's
in fairness, we asked for this last season, didn't listen to a word we said, but as soon as Brendan Rodgers asking for more goals, I'm going to score 6 goals in 5 weeks or whatever.
That's the calibre of the man, isn't it? That's the calibre of the man.
O'Reilly's in sensational form, isn't it? And I think we talked about it in the pre-match that you just can't expect him to score now. He's just in that rich vein of form where I think even he said everything he touches turns to gold, and turning to goals now as well for him. I think he's the one we sort of targeted, and we thought in the summer, look, he could have a smashing season. He's exceeding our targets anyway. He's looking brilliant, and if he keeps this up, the player of the year is a shoe-in for him.
He's the best player in the country.
Oh yeah, by a country mile at the moment, and there's decent competition there. So they've got a lot of good players, a lot of players in very good form. But Matt O'Reilly's in a league of his own at the moment, and it just seems to keep getting better and better. It's weird because a question we were asked at the time when Brendan Rodgers first came back, when we do our various Patreon properties, like one in the phone in that we do every second Friday. Is they were asking who we could see improving under Brendan Rodgers, and a name that came up time and time again was Matt O'Reilly. But I just thought he could probably kick him onto the next gear. I don't know really what that's based on. Maybe it is just the very
it's a Stuart Armstrong thing.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's the very obvious comparison you could make to that, because Armstrong was that guy that in the previous seasons, I think we've all spoken about how we'd have been happy to just let Armstrong go wherever, because he was a nothing player under Ronnie Dyler. A player with clear talent, but he didn't really produce anything. Fits and starts for Ronnie Dyler, but as soon as Rodgers came in, he turned him into a completely different player, an unstoppable force, and he eventually got a move to the Premier League off that. So I think there were obvious parallels there with Matt O'Reilly, and it seems to be bearing out like that, to be honest. And Matt O'Reilly, the sky's the limit for the guy. He's a very, very good player indeed, and to have added goals now to what was already a very impressive set of skills last season, including the assists and passing and the ability to break up play, which I think maybe goes not underrated but understated. It's not really spoken about a lot with Matt O'Reilly, because you don't look at O'Reilly and think a hard-nosed breaker up of play, a destroyer midfielder, but he can do the dirty work in there when it comes to it. But to add goals to that, basically the complete midfielder now.
I mean, we're looking at him and we're looking at his growth trajectory, Melly, and unlike sort of Hatate, who we'll talk about just now, there's been no real fits and starts with Matt O'Reilly. Since we brought the guy into the club, it's been sort of clear progression. He's played in lots of different positions for us, but as Stephen said, even playing that deeper role, that number 6, he handled it brilliantly. Brendan Rodgers has given him another job this season, and he's just taken it up and he's running with it. And he said in his post-match, a lot of it's down to luck. I've got an open mindset and an open frame of mind, and I'm putting myself in these positions, and when things fall to me, I'm taking them. He's underplaying that massively though, because not every time a football manager gives you a job to do does someone complete it so successfully. Matt O'Reilly's doing it. Yeah,
he came in and he just hit the ground running for Celtic, and it sort of continued. He had a sort of wee lull very briefly, but he's consistently there for Celtic. He rarely, I don't know if he's ever missed a game for Celtic due to injury. He's always there, and right now he's just in sparkling form. And look, that first goal, it would be so easy for somebody to shank that, to miss kick it, to completely just volley thin air, but he caught it so sweetly. You can see him watching the ball, have a wee look to the keeper. The technique on it's brilliant, the pass is brilliant, and when confidence is flowing for you like that, things like that just go in for you, don't you? And you can see the contrast with him, and then you see the contrast with O. Everything's hitting the back of the net for O'Reilly, and O's just, he can't buy a goal right now. And O'Reilly, he's just flying there now. I think this was the one thing we needed for him to add to his game. He's done that. What do we next target do we set him? Does he have to get a goal in Europe just to cement that? Because best player in Scotland easily right now. It's time to push on to the next level, and I'm sure that's what he's looking at.
I don't think it's luck, Stephen, when you're watching a ball float in over your shoulder and you go, do you know what, I might just volley this past the keeper and a winner. Or flicked it. Well, look at me.
No, certainly not luck, because I'm glad that, Melly, you brought that up. The moment which I only noticed watching it back was when he looks ahead of the keeper. He's watching the ball the whole way, and then he has just a glance to get his bearings on where he is in the pitch and just smashes it straight across the keeper. And I said on the match reaction that you and I recorded, Jamie, after the game, was that I think the reason we're impressed so much by that goal is we can all imagine it, can't we? We can all imagine what would happen if the ball comes over your shoulder and you just comically slice it vertically straight up in the air. So the way he cuts across it, but it's so cleanly hit that the ball isn't turning when it hits the back of the net. It just arrows into the bottom corner. Just such a satisfying goal to watch. Any volley has that kind of special place in our heart, but that's so clean.
Because when you're playing football, if a ball comes over like that, you've got that split second. We imagine that happening, and then the reality is completely different when you do
a
it.
shin roller. that'd be a definite shin roller if it was me. But everything he done in the game was brilliant. See some of his passing. When he picks the ball up midfield and he just sort of glides forward a wee bit and he plays that perfectly weighted ball, usually in between the centre half and the fullback, just for the Celtic's winger to run on. That's the way football, for me anyway, is supposed to be played. That is how midfielders are supposed to perform. These beautiful slide rule passes, and he's just adding and adding and adding to his game.
Yeah, I thought about it when you were speaking on in the reaction, that he's good at that sort of wall pass, that bounce off, like the pass to Kyogo for the opening goal against Lazio. He just sort of lets it hit off his foot and it just glides along the ground like curling. It's just lovely to see, and just perfect weight from it. He's playing brilliantly. He's just, technique's great with him now. He's just bringing everything on to another level. And a few weeks ago we were worrying, oh no, he's playing that well that somebody will come in for him. We've got that new contract signed. He's flying under Brendan Rodgers. He's flying here at Celtic. There's more for him to come here.
I mean, where is he ceiling? That's the question. You're looking at a player like, I think there's no doubt, for me anyway, Stephen, that Matt O'Reilly's going to be our next record signing. Sale. Our next record sale. We could feasibly probably get more than we did for Kieran Tierney or Jota for him, I think, because he's just, he's almost, as Melly said earlier, he's turning into the complete midfielder. But you're looking at the guy, he's still very young. He's only been at Celtic a short time. You're like, where is the ceiling for this guy?
Yeah, and everything's coming together for him just at the right moment. He's starting to get that international recognition. That we spoke about in previous weeks.
Makes you sick, man. He's got it all. He's about 6 foot, gorgeous, loaded.
Stop it, you. It just seems to be all coming up Matt O'Reilly just now. So it's a great time to have him, and long may it continue, because what a player he's been. And he deserves, as much as we focused on the thing about Brendan Rodgers improving him, he deserves huge credit for that as well, because a manager, even tweaking or slightly altering a player's role, it can work and it can't. I mean, even under Brendan Rodgers, we saw that with like guys like Craig Gordon. He tried to turn him into a more sort of...
Well, they called him number one sweeper keeper, didn't they?
Try to turn him into a sweeper keeper. It's happened here and there.
Instead, he turned him into a cheater keeper.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And even more recently, guys like Greg Taylor, who we worried about this season because his role changed and he was more of a traditional fullback going on the outside, and we thought, right, well, he can't do this, and gradually he's come back into a more familiar role. So it can be hit and miss when you try and alter a player's role. He's maybe just not suited to it, but Matt O'Reilly just seems to take to anything that's put in front of him and really just adapts to it extremely well. He's not looked uncomfortable in any... I know various roles is stretching it, but it's not as if he's been asked to play right back or anything, but he has played a variety of midfield roles, including dead centre, a number 8 wide of Callum McGregor's actual position, and now this more advanced getting into the box and finishing off chances role. He's done all of them excellently.
Playing better than Callum McGregor just now?
I would probably make that case, because, well, he is the best player in Scotland just now, Matt O'Reilly. I don't think there's anyone really competing with him, but Callum McGregor has been good. Maybe not his best season so far, but he'll his time will come.
He's just so consistent. Yeah. We're brought to you today by Manscaped, who's taken a step up from Halloween, dear me, to bring your face the cleanest shave it's ever seen. So this season, no need to toil and trouble. Manscaped's all-new Handyman is the best way to get rid of that stubble. Featuring compact design and next-generation skin-safe technology, the Handyman was designed to give you that smooth finish without a mess of a traditional shave. Get a sweet treat this Halloween by going to manscaped.com and use the code TIMS, T-I-M-S, for 20% off, plus free shipping.
It may be spooky season, but you don't want to scare people with a scraggly beard. Give them something to look at with Manscaped's Handyman. Are you tired of a bad razor making your neck look like a scary movie? With the Handyman's skin-safe technology to help reduce nicks and cuts, you can finally feel confident when going for that close shave. That's right, your Halloween costumes may take effort, but beard grooming doesn't need to, when you can get 20 different beard lengths in just one guard.
Can I just say something, Stephen? Manscaped, this isn't in the read, but they actually sent us this box of product, and I've been using it, and it's actually good.
You look fantastic,
Thanks
Jay.
very much. Genuinely, it is really good. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code TIMS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off. Free shipping at manscaped.com when you use the word TIMS. For a look as sweet as candy, get yourself the Handyman from Manscaped. The form he's in just now, where does he rank then? Better than Armstrong? Better than McGregor, but he's already better than McGregor at the moment. But better than Armstrong, where's he ranked? Sort of better than Cham in the sort of Brendan Rodgers era.
Balloomba.
Both eras better. The both eras. Where's Matt O'Reilly sitting just now in terms of performance?
Oh, time will tell, but I think right now he's off to a smashing start. I think his
No, I'm not accepting that. I want an answer from you, Melly.
Time will tell. You will tell.
Time is now, right? I've asked the question.
You let me finish.
Right, okay.
I'll say. His ceiling is. You asked where his ceiling is. I think it's much higher than Stuart Armstrong right now, and I think he could go on to have a better season than Stuart Armstrong. Oh, could he probably have a better season than Scott Brown's best ever as well? Probably.
That's a bold call. Didn't even think about that one.
Well, it's 6 goals so far. No, it's not only about goals, but Stuart Armstrong became quite a threat from the midfield area in terms of goals. But if O'Reilly continues this form, there's no reason to think that he wouldn't get 12, 15, 18
Ryan
goals.
Christie goal territory.
Yeah, it could well do. And at that point, he's not really up against much at all. I think he's right up there in terms of midfielders. So again, it's not all about goals, but if you are able to add to that, that's very, very impressive, because Tom Rogic got a good few from midfield. Armstrong got a good few. Christie was good as well. But to get a proper goal-scoring midfielder, especially from a guy you didn't really expect it from in the first place, it would be very difficult to argue against as a top midfielder.
I think it will struggle to top Rogic for me, I think, just in terms of sheer love and fandom that I have for the guy. But I think in terms of sheer quality, it's just, as you say, everything's going right for Matt O'Reilly just now. And when I look across the midfield, Melly, to Rio Hatate in the Hearts game, that was Rio Hatate encapsulated, wasn't it? Some great stuff, some not so great stuff. We looked at the numbers in the post-match podcast. He wasn't ideal, and he missed a penalty. Yeah,
the penalty when he was stepping up to take it, I was like, please hit a good one. I wasn't asking him to score, I was just asking him to hit a good one, and it wasn't a good one.
Do you not think, well, me and Stephen said in the post-match it was a good one. We thought it was, it was well placed, it was out the way of the keeper, but he was just unfortunate. So you disagree? You think that wasn't a good one?
It was, but then when you look at his body of evidence for his other penalties, it's not a good one, because he's hit one straight at the keeper. He just doesn't look like he's going to bury any penalties. And
do we have a penalty problem?
Potentially. I thought when Palma came in, he was meant to be a set-piece specialist, but he hasn't been taking corners, he's not taking free kicks, and he's not taking penalties, so time will tell on that one, I suppose. But I think Rio Hatate, he's got to start burying them. It'll look like he's going to bury them, but his all-round play, he's still at the heart of everything Celtic do. Doesn't mean it's always good. It means sometimes, like the touch for Alistair Johnston, where he touches it through, some of that play where he's going in between the fullback and the midfield when he gets into that box, sort of just before the box, is brilliant. Those runs he makes where he can cut it back, but some of his simple stuff is really, really poor. It's sometimes when he's got too much time, it can be a bit erratic, but you simply don't take him out, because he can create things when he does. And when you've got McGregor and O'Reilly there who are reliable, who are consistent, I think you can afford to have a guy like Hatate there. The problem comes in the European games. We can't afford to be giving away aimless balls like that, and that's where it might fall down for him. But he's working his way into it this season. He didn't get quite the pre-season and start to the season. He's contributing, but still more to come from him. But the good thing about Hatate is we know what we can get from him, and it's good.
So this thing about we know what we can get, I think the frustration lies if you're the manager of Celtic and you're completely unromantic about the situation, Stephen. You're getting one great performance out of Hatate like you did in the last game, then the next game he's just okay. So can you really bank on 4 or 5 okay performances and then one extraordinary performance, or can you bank on playing an hour, playing 80 minutes, whatever the case may be, coming up with 2 moments, 1 moment of magic every couple of games? It's sometimes managers chase that consistency, don't they? And we've just sat here for the first however many minutes of the podcast after you edit all the mistakes that I made, praising Matt O'Reilly, praising his consistency, praising his contribution game after game after game, and then we've got another guy in Rio Hatate who's like, what is he, the personality hire? Is that?
Well, the thing is, you could find a more consistent presence in the midfield. You could just play David Turnbull. You could do that, but at what cost is what I would ask you, because despite the fact that Rio Hatate's performance against Hearts was spotty, it was up and down, a little bit inconsistent. 2 genuine moments of sheer brilliance that set up at least 2 of Celtic's goals, and if those don't happen, we're sitting here talking about a completely different performance. Maybe not, because Hearts were pretty deplorable on the day. I think
come on to that.
Yeah, Celtic would have got the job done one way or another, but the touch for Palma for Kyogo's goal, not a direct assist, but the guy who triggered the whole move, and his interplay, I think you said with Johnston to set up Maeda's goal, which on that goal, the length of time it took them to decide whether that was offside when it was clearly, visibly well onside.
They were looking for something. They were looking for something
extraordinary. But again, how do you balance this up? I don't have the answer to it, because you could talk about consistency, but what do you lose by not putting Rio Hatate in for one of these games?
I'm a fan. I'm not saying I'm not a fan of the guy. I'm a fan of the guy, but you know, if Brendan Rodgers is trying to reach peak Celtic, he might be looking at Rio Hatate going, look, under me you don't get 1 good game in 4. Well, under me I need good game. He has been, I wouldn't use the word critical, but he has slipped out a couple of clues that he isn't entirely happy with the performance. And I think that's only right. As a manager, you're going to scrutinise your team's performance as you're looking for, if not the perfect performance, but optimum peak Celtic, as you've described it there. I've noticed that he described Kyogo as a guy who's a brilliant little striker, patronising. Yeah.
But he also said that he makes a lot of runs. He could make more runs. So I've started to notice little, not criticisms, but little requests that people start doing more. Right, we've all settled into the season now. We've all
that's it.
Got that little sticky patch out of the way at the start of the season where we weren't scoring goals. I want more now. I'm sort of gradually teasing more and more out of this team. So you're probably right to. It's a discussion worth having as to whether you can get more out of Hatate. I'm sure that'll come though.
I think that's what's so good about Brendan Rodgers, isn't it? While the football's not as free flowing as Ange was, there's a chance for that to come back, but it's the little things that he can improve in people's games, like demanding that from Hatate. I think, did they not say to him recently, like, the game's 90 minutes, I need you to be more in it? And
well, that's kind of what was talking about on Tomoki, but this is precisely it, because he said that to Hatate. He goes out and performs. What was the last game? Kilmarnock at home.
Yeah.
Does brilliantly, gives Hatate's moment on the pitch. The very next game, back to type, reverts to type, you know?
Yeah, that's just off the back of international break where he was away, so I suppose you can give him that sort of leeway, but I think that's what Brendan Rodgers will be demanding off these guys, like coming in off the back of Ange winning a treble, you're like, what can we really do here? And these are the wee incremental positive things that Brendan Rodgers can do. Demand more of Matt O'Reilly. You need to score more goals. Kyogo, you know how to score goals in Scotland, but see if you make more runs, you'll end up scoring more goals in Europe, and he's done that already. Even things like Maeda seems to be getting in dangerous positions more, getting himself in there. So I think all these wee things that Brendan Rodgers can do to improve individual players, then I think it will make the team a bit better, while the team isn't probably as free-flowing as last season.
Lord knows we've got enough midfielders if we need to replace one. You know, Brendan Rodgers spoke midweek for the first time maybe, and it's something that we've touched on a few times in the podcast. He spoke midweek, Stephen, about about what did he say? What was his exact phrase? He said the squad is too big, there's too many players, or the squad's bloated. Did he say bloated?
I don't think he said, I don't know if he used the word bloated, but he did say that they have far too many players. They have far too many players in the squad. True. And I was quite interested by that press conference during the week ahead of the Hearts game, because he was asked questions that were out of the ordinary, which was credit to whoever asked them. But it's not as if it was tough questions, but it was stuff that we don't normally hear about. after you get all the stuff about who's injured, what's the plans, what are you expecting from Hearts, etc. out the way, a few people asked him direct questions about, right, there's this player, what's happening with him, what's happening with him, what's happening with him. And Brendan Rodgers eventually just sort of said, look, we've got far too many players. And it kind of piqued my interest because it's something we've been talking about recently about how this Celtic team are really starting to play well. I like the direction in which the Celtic team are going. But my one gripe with it would be that there doesn't seem to be, to me, there doesn't feel like there's much competition for places, if at all. Now, you could look across that team. Yes, we've got loads of midfielders, but are any of them troubling for a place just now? Are any of the... Well, we had a bit of a crisis in defenders, so I won't bring that into it just yet. Is anyone troubling Kyogo for his place? Again, I do accept Kyogo as the outright number one, but have we got anyone who can start maybe every fifth or sixth game to give him a rest because he's got recurring shoulder problems, stuff like that? No, that is the answer to that. Do we have anyone who's looking for a place in the wing areas? Probably not. So I think that Celtic have somehow got themselves into a bit of an issue where we've collected an awful lot of players. Very, very few of them are actually worthy of any kind of contribution just now. Now, their time might come, but I think at the last count with something like 34 or 35 first-team squad members, are 20 of them all but completely redundant at the moment, and a lot of them are signings. A lot of them are guys like Yuki Kobayashi, like Alexandro Bernabe, like there are many others. Kwon is a brand new signing. Bernardo, Tilio, who Brendan Rodgers now says is, without using these words, basically miles off it. Nowhere near playing. So Mikey Johnson isn't a new signing, but he is a guy that Celtic have reinvested both contractually and time-wise in this player. They've given him a new contract, so he is, in effect, not a new signing, but he is a guy who they expect to see long-term. Nowhere near it. So we've got an awful lot of players in there, and it just seems to be a bit of a weird management of a squad. I don't mind Celtic. I've said this in the past. I don't mind Celtic taking not so much gambles, but taking risks on players about that investment level, because two guys we've already mentioned today, look what can get you. You can get your Matt O'Reilly, get your Rio Hatate on occasion, but you might accumulate quite a lot of sort of...
Adiguchis.
Yeah, Adiguchis. My issue here appears to be that I don't mind Celtic doing that, but Celtic seem to be absolutely terrible at getting rid of them. We don't seem to have an exit for any of these guys, so the squad just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We give out contracts that seem now that when you're excited about new signings coming in, you think, oh, that's a really good bit of business, long-term planning and all that, and then as soon as they're in the door 6 months, in the case of Kobayashi, he's got a 5-year contract, and now it looks like he's never going to play for Celtic again.
I mean, did Brendan not say he would have been on loan had it not been for injury?
Yeah.
So it tells you what you need to know, really.
If he goes out on loan, it's as good as Adiguchid, to be honest. I don't think he'll be back. It seems like a very strange one. So these aren't issues for the here and now because Celtic are playing well, but we might come into a point this season where we start to look frayed, where we start to look into the squad. Who can dig us out here? Who can actually come in and contribute? The answer is not very many at the moment.
The worry for me, Melly, is when players just stop contributing altogether, or they drop out of. They don't drop from like starting to bench to then out the team. You know, take for instance Lagerbielke, who was starting games for Celtic, albeit out of necessity, just doesn't make the bench anymore. Like we've got Phillips here, who's leaving in January, but I don't see any reason why we would keep Phillips on unless well, let me frame it another way. If we end up going to Liverpool, let's buy Phillips, then the writing's on the wall for Lagerbielke as far as I'm concerned, because he's taking his place off him.
Yeah, there's guys in there who, like you're saying, are starting not to contribute, and there's guys that haven't contributed, like Kwon, like Tilio. I can give Tilio a sort of pass because he was injured at the start, but so many guys there that have made less than one appearance for Celtic this season. That it's a lot of money to be spending on players. There's a lot of wages there. The centre halves, it was tough at the start. Maybe Lagerbielke Celtic would have liked to have just dropped him in a bit more gently than he was, but the fact is he's 22, 23 years old.
International footballer.
Yeah, so he's in. Plus with him, you want him to play. Home wasn't on the bench of the weekend, but he's going to be suspended during the week, so do you try and get some game time for Bernardo? Maybe fair enough, but Home was meant to be a really big prospect. So looking down the line, Celtic have got that team at the weekend there is the strongest team we've got. Maybe Nawrocki comes in for Scales long term, but we get a couple of injuries here and there, you're starting to worry. But at the same time as that, it gives you an opportunity. Maybe Bernardo looked all right when he came on, international recognition for him as well, so I think there could be a player in there. But sometimes you get somebody coming out of that you didn't expect. We've already had it with Liam Scales, but Tomoki Iwata was the one that came in, and you think, right, okay, we've brought in all these midfielders, Kwon, Home, Turnbull's still there, Bernardo's come in, but is our best option then moving Cal McGregor forward and bringing Iwata on?
Well, I mean, I was quite impressed with Iwata. I think Iwata's been tidy every time we've seen him.
Every cameo.
He certainly looks like a footballer. J-League Player of the Year when we signed him. He clearly, well, you would expect with that sort of pedigree coming into the club, he has something about him. He took his goal really well. He's absolutely buzzing about it. He's all over social media talking about it. He's pleased about it and how long. He seems like a guy who, just judging by the comments he's made in the past and what he's saying on social media, he seems determined to make it at Celtic. I'm not ready to write him off.
No, definitely not. And I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but you can sometimes tell a lot about a player and how well liked they are, how popular they are by when they get that first goal, how happy everyone else is for him. It happened with Bernabe as well, actually. When he got that goal, everyone was buzzing for him. But when
I had to let him go in the end, though.
Rubbish. But when Iwata scored that, O'Reilly was over. He said something to him and gave him a big hug and all that. So Iwata, I've been confused by his position in the squad as well, because I thought, a couple of weeks ago we were as well listing him in the names of, we've just rolled out there. But I was confused by his position in the squad because I thought he looked really good last season. I know that eventually emergency dictated that he ended up playing a bit of centre half to, mixed success, let's put it kindly. But then in pre-season this year, he ended up playing right back, didn't look very good. Centre half again, didn't look very good. Completely out of the picture for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. I thought, what's going on with this guy? He looked really good, and then we've brought in, we keep just throwing that name out, brought in Kwon for absolutely no reason, right? Brought in Kwon, Home, and all these guys, and we've signed about 4 midfielders, and still none of them are better than David Turnbull because he's the guy that's on the bench. So it's all a bit odd, but I'm really happy that Iwata's back in the fold because I think he's very useful. I think he's a guy who can play a number of roles, and I wouldn't expect him to score that many goals because that's his first one. He's been here a wee while, but he took it really well. What amused me about it was that seeing the replays of that goal, Sky and then Sports Scene did it as well. They paused the ball when it hits the ground as if when it goes in off the bar, it's to prove that it went over the line. But the ball just went straight into the net. As soon as it bounced, it went straight. There's absolutely no reason to pause that.
There's a lot of weird graphics. I've noticed the one where they put the circle around the guy running. It's meaningless now. I don't know where that's came from. That goes, watch Hatate's run here, and they just put a circle around and put the trailing dots so you can tell where it ran from. Well, we put the circle around. I know I can follow it.
I think it was a great finish from him, wasn't it? But the thing that got me is it's at first I thought it was Yang that hit it because it's on the right wing. That's where Yang should be, and we were just quickly watching the highlights before it. So when the ball comes to O, behind him is Iwata, and then O'Reilly comes into the box. There's when the ball goes in the net, there's 5 players in the box. You can see it from the still. Yang's no there. You're a right winger, and this is why I kind of what we're talking about, the guys that are going to contribute. I just don't know if you're just going to see Yang sort of drop down the pecking order now, because to be a Celtic winger, you have to be in goal scoring positions, and that's just one instance. But I remember when we used to go to the games that under Tony Mowbray, a guy that really frustrated me, along with pretty much every player in that team, was Niall McGinn. Because
I had absolutely no idea which name you were going to say. That could have been literally anyone. Could
have been about 20 and you would have still not said Niall McGinn. But the point being, the ball would go across and Niall McGinn would always be 2 or 3 yards behind. Whereas if he had been further forward, he'd get tap-ins all the time. And with Yang, I just don't look like he's going to be scoring these goals. And Iwata got forward there, got himself the rewards and gets the goal. Same with O, he was getting himself
he was so unlucky, man.
Getting himself into decent positions, but it just wasn't falling for him, and I just didn't see that with Yang. And what we're talking about, the squad and players coming in, when last season James Forrest barely got a look in for Celtic, now he's our first attacking option off the bench. It just shows how far we've fallen, Stephen. But staying in the positives, what about for during the week? Atletico Madrid, it's going to be tough. Do you go Iwata, McGregor and O'Reilly?
You never want to upset the apple cart, do you, too much? Dropping a player in that's not played so much, because if that backfires and we end up getting absolutely overrun, then that's the one guy that's going to get the blame for it. But I
think we're going to get overrun either way.
I know, I can definitely understand where you're coming from, and he does tend to offer that wee bit more security, and he has said in the past though he doesn't see where he fits into Brendan Rodgers' setup. He says this is the way I play, and the manager doesn't play that way. So I think it's too much of a risk. I think you just have to give him. You just need to give Hatate one of those whatever pep talk you gave Hatate before Kilmarnock. Just give him it again before Madrid.
Is Iwata that meme of, you ever seen that meme of the big giant water tank with a hole in it and there's water pouring out and somebody's got a tiny little sticker in their hand? Is that a sticker marked Iwata? Just slap that on the giant cascade of water that's coming out of that tank. Is that what he's going to be against Atletico Madrid?
And just the one man against the on-rushing Atletico Madrid. I can see your logic and I can understand it. I mean, worse gambles have played off, I suppose, or higher risk gambles have paid off. But I just think you don't want to upset what is a pretty well functioning midfield at the moment.
Aye, I do get the logic behind potentially bringing Iwata in to try and stiffen things up a little bit, because Lord knows we'll probably need it. I mean, I get, jokes aside, this is one of the best teams currently playing in Europe. Atletico Madrid. It's not like one of those sort of fallen giants like AC Milan where you think, well, we could maybe take something off them. But
Or Lazio.
Yeah, Lazio, yeah. Atletico Madrid are in very, very good form. I think they've won 6 straight, including having climbed up the league significantly. Wasn't that long ago, but it wasn't in this current run, but they took 7 off Rayo Vallecano quite recently, so they're in pretty hot form. It will be very, very difficult, but Celtic are coming in a good spot. Hearts was a really good performance. As much as Hearts were terrible, and they were.
Oh yeah,
laughably so.
I don't want to go into Atletico Madrid too soon, because there's still stuff to chew over, masticate over in this Hearts thing, because Hearts were absolutely terrible, and just this is something I've been moaning about since the game. But looking across the whole Hearts thing, like from the manager to the team to the way that I don't want to come across all Walter Smith about it, right? But the way that Stephen A. Smith presents himself in that tired old hoodie, he doesn't look to me like a man who's taking the job awfully seriously,
No.
you know, and he's never a manager, so you could sack him tomorrow and improve your team. But the one thing that did really ground my gears a wee bit, and subsequent to this, I heard a Hearts fan on a podcast talking about how they don't care that there's no Celtic fans in the stadium, because very confident he was that we sell out our games, we'll sell out that game, they bother. What happened? What happened to your boy? Because that to me was an absolute scandal. So you give Celtic the tiny wee crumbs of the stadium. I think we got 500 in the end up 517, whatever the official figure was, 570. From kick-off, the stadium wasn't sold out. So there was smatterings of empty seats all over the place. An hour in, it is like watching a game for COVID times. And as a pure spectacle, as an absolute spectacle, watching that's... Whatever you think of Hearts and how poorly they're performing right now, that is Scottish football's maybe second biggest match between Celtic and Rangers, maybe Celtic Aberdeen, Celtic Hearts, Celtic Hibs. You could decide, whatever your preference is, but Celtic at Tynecastle's always been a raucous, rowdy, aggressive affair. Everyone talks about the thing about Tynecastle is the fans are right on the pitch. Bollocks. Absolute bollocks. And for me, Hearts, you tried the experiment. You tried the not giving Celtic fans any tickets and we'll see if we sell it out. It didn't work. It didn't do your players any good because they were sleepyheads after an hour. There was no energy on that pitch whatsoever. It did you no good in the long run of the game. The atmosphere was terrible. The television spectacle was terrible. And there was only 570 Celtic fans in, but we were the ones making all the noise for the full game. So it asked and answered as far as I'm concerned on this thing, because we're just killing our league here.
Dismal. It was a ridiculous display, and it was clear from maybe a couple of goals in, they started chucking it and just leaving. Just a tragic display once again. Meanwhile, we're going to Sky, give us all the money, give us tens and tens of millions of pounds to serve up that absolute nonsense.
It just goes like this. Like, what, for this? With a telly behind him. What, you want more money for this? You can't even be arsed showing up to watch it.
Just ridiculous. I don't know what it is. I think it must be more complicated than I'm making out in my own head, that it's just all this weird, maybe misplaced pride and posturing from certain fans groups.
That's exactly what it is. It's just
tribalism.
So? Yeah. It's just tribalism. That's all it is.
I would like to have thought not. I was trying to kind of pull away from that point of view, but that was my initial impression, to be honest. I think we've got into a weird situation in Scottish football, led mainly by Rangers' decision to do it a few years ago now, where we're just unhappy to see opposition fans in our own grounds, and it's just not a point to be made at all. Imagine that in any other league.
Imagine this is the point I was making, and I did lift it from the Discord, but it was, imagine Man U just decided they hated Liverpool fans. Well, they kind of do, but to the point where we're not going to let Liverpool fans in our stadium anymore. That wouldn't fly. That wouldn't even get off the ground as a discussion.
And that would be the extreme one, because that's one of the so-called rivals rivalries in England. So that would then trickle down to one of the lesser games like Celtic versus Hearts, because that's not in the same level as Celtic versus Rangers, or maybe even Rangers versus Aberdeen. So it starts trickling down to the point where Luton are like, no, we don't want Man City celebrating in our stadium, so we're going to give them 100 tickets. It just wouldn't happen.
No.
But your response to me saying that is correct. It's a completely absurd thing to bring up, because it just wouldn't happen. But for some reason in Scottish football, we're sowing the seeds of this, and we absolutely have to put a stop to it now before it gets
seems
ridiculous.
We're desperate to kill our own league, Billy. And I think, honestly, this is like, there's like I don't want to sound like a pure woke idiot here, right? Go woke, go broke, like a Midlothian, right? But there's like this toxic fandom on the internet that exists on Twitter, right? Which is mostly a meme, right?
Yeah.
It's mostly a meme. We hate the old firm, we hate. Like, I know you guys want to pretend you support a big team and all that, but the fact is you don't. Like, that's just that's just facts. You don't have the numbers, you don't have the fans, you don't have it. So we hate Celtic. We will lock them out our stadium. Our Hearts fans will sit. It's not going to happen. That is not going to happen, and it played out there. And I think Brendan Rodgers calls for some sort of minimum quantity for the league. I think that needs to come in, and it's pathetic that you need to do it. And the difference between Hearts and Rangers is Rangers try to close the gap on Celtic, so they locked us out because they didn't like us celebrating, then immediately sold season tickets for those seats to get themselves more money in. Now, that, whether you agree with it or not, that as a business decision for the people whose main interest is getting as much money into Rangers Football Club as possible, that makes sense. The Hearts thing was to lock Celtic fans out, hopefully sell tickets to their own fans, and that never panned out. So there was no real benefit for them. So that it doesn't make any sense, and it's a failed experiment, as I've said 8 times now.
Yeah, it's not just Hearts, there's many other teams. Remember St Mirren's Classic, where they offered people a chance to buy tickets so our Celtic fans didn't get to go to games and that.
£1.2 million lost, I think.
Worked out well, lads, worked out well. But we're sick of tired of sick of moaning about it. It's getting to the point where people that go to away games regularly can't go. And there's people that are desperate to go to away games that never get to go because tickets aren't available to them. So at some point, somebody has to sit down and be sensible and say, look, we have a product here that people want to go and see. It's not a very good product, but there's still people out there desperate to come and watch it. You don't need to do anything else, by the way. The seats are all there. Everything's there. Just let them pay to go and watch the football. I don't understand it. I keep saying, like, no other sport in the world would do this. If somebody came over from abroad and said, you're not going to the game this weekend? No, why not? Couldn't get a ticket. Sold out? Nope.
Yeah, it's like back to boxing, all of it. It's like Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul at Wembley. Right. And they just go, are we going to have that tier full, that tier full? No, we're going to keep that tier empty because we don't like Jake Paul fans. Like, to me, it doesn't make any sense. And I wouldn't be sitting here saying this had Hearts sold out the stadium and it was that time capsule atmosphere and they were all jumping up and down for the full 90 minutes and it really spurred the players on and it was a classic battle of a match and I'm thought, God, that was brilliant, all those Hearts fans, but it was nowhere near close to that.
Literally the only thing they had to do to stop this forever was to just turn up.
Yeah.
Just turn up, just buy their tickets, turn up and make it the atmosphere that it's, it's famed for a reason. We all say that as fans. We all hear that from Celtic players who've been there. We all hear it from Brendan Rodgers. They all talk about the Tynecastle atmosphere, and he also said it was the quietest he'd ever heard it. So it's not that it's a kind of like the discussion we've been having recently about the Celtic Park atmosphere myth. It's not a myth because these reputations come about for a reason. It's just that they let them, for whatever reason, they let them kind of wither a little bit, and that seems to be what Hearts have done. But that we shut up forever if they just turn up in their droves to this game, prove themselves right, prove us wrong. But they didn't do it, and that's basically it.
And with Hearts, you just know it's a lot of crap anyway, because in the Scottish Cup game last season, Celtic get given an allocation because in Scottish Cup games you have to give a certain allocation, and Celtic got a lot. I got to go to that game, but now it's a league game and they get 500 people. It's crazy. This is a product we think struggles to sell. I reckon between Celtic and Rangers, you could probably sell out at least half of the away stadiums. But look, that's not probably realistic, is it? So give them the stand, give them what they want. People want to go and see football. Let them pay to go and see it. There's people outside every away ground hanging about with money and they can't get in to watch the football.
Look, I suppose the elephant in this room is we're talking about away fans and tickets and Celtic fans wanting more tickets. This week the Green Brigade were banned for taking tickets for away games. Celtic made that decision. To me, it was a bit peculiar. They didn't put any official statement out. The
email does.
The email does. The emailed people and went, look, this is our side of the story. We put it on our Twitter. Apparently there's been some examples of bad behaviour from the Green Brigade from Celtic's point of view that meant that they're not going to take up away tickets. It comes around the same time as the Green Brigade are planning a Palestine banner for the Atletico Madrid game. Some people are drawing their own conclusions about where that goes. I'm not going to put words in anyone's mouth. You can decide yourself. But do you think there is an argument that away clubs might turn around and say, well, look, we have, these small number and you've had to ban your own fans. It's causing trouble. We don't necessarily want to give you any more tickets. Or do you just think that is a very small number and it doesn't really reflect on the Celtic support that travel on the whole?
It's a small number. When was the last time there was trouble in an away game? Oh, some fans spilled onto the pitch at Motherwell.
Motherwell fans
were on it as well. Like these things happening. Look, maybe it's because you're condensing it into such a small space that people are overspilling. I think whether or not there's been no trouble, but whether or not it's look, the Green Brigade done this or that doesn't make a difference because there's not been any trouble and you've been cutting allocations and cutting allocations and cutting allocations. The fact is, Scottish football claims it's skint. Scottish football claims it's got this going for it, it's not got much going for it. It likes to put itself down, but the fact is, people want to go to the football. People want to go and watch their team. They can't, and they will pay to go and watch their team. It's not as if we're asking for something that hasn't happened. We're not asking, going to give us 10,000 seats at Heart Stadium. They're asking for what they used to have, what generations and generations used to have, and now it's been taken away. Why?
I think, just on the Green Brigade thing, Steve, I think if you're going to ban fans, right, it doesn't have to call them the Green Brigade, call them whatever. If you're going to ban fans from taking tickets for games for whatever reason, I'm not saying that Celtic are making this up, and I'm not saying that, we've not heard from the Green Brigade, they've not denied it, so we don't know what their position is on it. But I think you have to be a wee bit more transparent. I don't think you can come out weeks after the fact and say there was bad behaviour at Feyenoord away, which we didn't mention at that time, and that's playing into a decision now. There was issues at Motherwell, which we didn't mention at that time, and that's playing into a decision now. I think if Celtic are going to do this in the future, and it'll definitely get resolved, these things always end up getting resolved. But I think they need to be more clear and they need to be more transparent. You need to be a bit more honest because was it like a random Friday evening or something? What day was it? Like it just
the email just dropped into our inbox at some point, and it was weird because we didn't really know what to do with it because Celtic hadn't made any official announcement.
I was looking for a link on the official website.
What are we supposed to do with this email? Do you want us to do your dirty work for us? Basically, it was like a bit odd. I mean, we did put it out anyway, but we just said sort of, well, here's what they've said.
Just copied and pasted.
Just sort of deal with it. Really, make your own mind up. Depends what the process is when it comes to being transparent about it, because it might not be as simple as, we've identified a bit of so-called bad behaviour at a certain game and then immediately react to that. There might be a sort of process involved where they have to investigate that in some way, find out who was involved, liaise with the police, liaise with the club. The clubs involved might put in some sort of complaint here. By the way, your fans turned up and did X at our stadium.
I think the main issue was this sort of at Motherwell. There was talk of like they forced the fire exit open and like fans getting
for unticketed fans. That's the allegation that Celtic have made. Supposedly, right? So there might be a process involved there. There might be talking between clubs and the police and Stuart, etc. They might just have to get to the bottom of it rather than just going, by the way, there's a video on Twitter. We need to ban people straight away. There will be a wee bit of sort of due process involved in that before they can make a decision on that.
I think it's just, I think the lack of clarity. I think we're always on the ones talking about like the way Celtic communicate things, and the lack of clarity leads to conspiracy theories and leads to backlash and all that sort of stuff. So I think Celtic didn't really help themselves the way they communicated it, to be honest with you. And I think
they didn't really.
They absolutely didn't. But it's a bit of a storm in the teacup, and I don't really want it to detract because at the end of the day, we're not getting that many tickets anyway. The positive is other people might get an opportunity to go. Brendan Rodgers is probably happy about it. The Green Brigade weren't there, so people were singing his name for the first time. Brendan's absolutely loving it.
I couldn't believe it when I heard that coming through my TV speakers. Couldn't believe it.
He'll be sitting there going, any chance we could keep this band going for as long as possible. But all attention is going to turn to Celtic Park for reasons of football and reasons for crowd participation or whatever the display that's going to happen on Wednesday night. But our focus, Melly, is going to be how Celtic perform in this Champions League game.
Please don't get pumped.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking. But it's going to be very, very difficult. We knew going into it, this was probably going to be the toughest ties we're going to face. We're going into it with Neil Pla, so we're looking at it like Celtic need to if they want to qualify for the Champions League, they're going to need to win 3 out of 4 games. That's not going to happen, so we need to try and look at it, right, how do we qualify for Europa League? Lazio and Feyenoord are playing each other. Celtic just need to go out and do what they can do, and even if it was full strength Celtic, we're free flowing. We're not quite there yet, but we're doing well. Even coming up against these teams is a tall order now. So just looking for a good performance from Celtic. I think if we can get something to get the crowd going again, because while the atmosphere has sort of died down a bit, that's because the team hasn't given us much to get behind a lot of the time. So let's get something to get behind this week. I think it could be one of those special nights, but looking very, very difficult these days. And Atletico Madrid are a well-oiled machine, a good manager. Griezmann's one of the best players about there now, so it's going to be tough. I'm still looking forward to it.
I mean, we had them scouted. Alex, Euro expert, who is our resident scout, produced a podcast with Melly for patreon.com/20minute-Tims. Told us everything we needed to know about Atletico Madrid and sent the shitters right up me. We're going to have a match reaction podcast after the game. That will also be available to patrons. There's no doubt, Stephen, it's going to be a tough call. It's going to be a tough evening in the office for Celtic, as Melly said. Sadly, we're going in with Neil Pla. I'd rather be going in with Neil Lennon.
Neil Plantis Lennon.
Neil Plantis Lennon. Is all hope lost, or can Celtic pull one at the bag here?
It's going to be very, very hard. I am reminded though of Real Madrid from last season. I know it's a different manager, different team, different eras and all that, and we're still adjusting. But Celtic were good against Real Madrid, I thought, until their quality eventually took over and quite comfortably swept Celtic aside. But Celtic went at Real Madrid. Remember, they hit McGregor hit the post quite early on. There was a few chances. And then, came a cropper. But Real Madrid were very, very good. They were the European champions at that point. Atletico Madrid are not that, but they're a very, very good team. And they just feel like the type of team who are a stylistic nightmare for a team like Celtic, in that they have a guy in Morata who is... I can't quite articulate this, but he seems like the type of guy who turns up and scores a hat-trick at Celtic Park.
Stephen, man, come on.
I don't know. It's because I think I'm scarred by the fact that he very recently scored against Scotland. So... Griezmann is one of the best players in the world, absolutely phenomenal player. And then
Celtic are a team where you kick off your season against, aren't you? If you're having a rough patch, you play Celtic, then bang, that's you.
This is a Celtic podcast.
Memphis Depay, I think, is not quite starting for them, but has scored quite recently. So they're a very good team.
No Moussa Dembele.
No Moussa Dembele.
Is that the only Celtic Athletic connection? I'm sure there's another one.
I'm not sure.
I've committed a cardinal sin there and sprung a question on you.
Very, very broad, hundreds of years old, or a couple of 100 years old question that. So, it's going to be hard. They're the best team in the group. Celtic haven't started the group particularly well. We have done okay in spells and come away with absolutely nothing. I would have wanted some points on the board by now going into this game, so that there will be less pressure on it, because I think it's going to be very difficult to get into a double header with the best team in the group and come away with anything at all. The most important game of the night might be the other one, where we'll find out.
For people who might not know me, what's the ideal scenario? So say Celtic get beaten off Atletico. What we want a draw. We want a Lazio win. What we want in the next game.
It's hard because they're both on. Well, Lazio have got 4 points, Feyenoord have got 3. So if you get a draw, puts them sort of further ahead of so I think you maybe want
somebody to lose.
Some team to win both games. So if Lazio beat them both, Feyenoord both games, that would be handy. But anything else apart from that, Celtic just fall further behind.
Well, look, would it not just be like Celtic, right? To go into the first game, lose numerous players with a patchwork team and pick up nothing. Go into the second game, the game that everyone expects you to win, pick up nothing. Go into the third game at home against the team that no one expects you to get an absolute thing off of, and end up stealing the show and winning this game. Is that not what Celtic? Is that not typical Celtic? Or am I just being a bit too romantic?
I think you're being a bit too romantic, but I think what we will see here is Celtic play really well and lose.
So what do you think Brendan's approach would be then? Do you think he just needs to go for it? Do you think he needs to play the way that he plays, or do you think he needs to park the bus, try and contain Atletico for as long as you can?
just play the way we play. I think I don't know if Celtic have a park the bus. I don't know if they'll ever have or ever will in my lifetime. So what do we do? Man already mentioned, do we summon the spirit of Walter? 4 centre halves along the back, right back and left back in midfield.
Full backs in
listen,
midfield.
We don't need to listen. I'm not going to stand for that. Even as if you want to summon a man, the spirit of a man that can win these types of games, get you through these tournaments, it's Gordon Strachan.
I thought you were going to go with Neil Francis.
No,
again.
well, Neil Francis Lane as well, but it's Gordon. You say Celtic never parked the bus, but Gordon Strachan, he was tearing everyone's hair out at the time, but he was like possession in a lot of these European games.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with this Celtic team. They're not quite the gung-ho style of Ange, but they do have control over these games, and it's killing teams now. Celtic just sort of strangle teams slowly, don't they? They're really good at controlled possession right now, and they can hit teams when they need to. It becomes a lot harder in Europe, but the more Celtic can keep the ball, the better, and that's what we're doing right now. So I think we just need to go out and play the way we're playing. I think with the way we've been going about things has been good, but we just maybe don't have the quality right now. But I don't think we should just fling that all in the bin and just say, like, let's try this out tonight and see what happens. You stick with it and then you try and add the quality in.
I think my worry for Celtic, just to sort of wrap up, I think, Stephen, my worry for Celtic, we all love him. I know this is controversial, but it's a podcast, I'm not allowed to be. I worry about that left-hand combination of Liam Scales and Greg Taylor, because Liam Scales has been performing well.
Yeah,
he's
good against Hearts again as well.
Performing brilliantly. And, you know, we always bet against the guy, and we maybe shouldn't, because I think he did very well in the Lazio game as well. He did okay in the Lazio game. But this is just, from what Alex was saying, that left-hand side, that's where most of Atletico Madrid's attack tends to come from anyway, and that's kind of where we're weakest. It's like where their strong point is meets our weak point, you know?
Well, that's what I was talking about when I said, not specifically that, but when I said they're a bit of a stylistic nightmare for Celtic, in that all of Celtic's
their
strong points,
right-hand side, meets our left-hand side.
Yeah. So they've also got a guy that Alex raved about on the left, a Brazilian wing-back on the left wing. He raved about him as well, so good. But we've also got, when you think about what Celtic can possibly do at home against one of the giants here, you think about, we've got that kind of X factor, that kind of chaos up front where you can put them under real pressure. Kyogo, Maeda getting right on top of maybe their keeper, maybe their centre halves, because they've been playing Axel Witsel in centre halves. He's not the most comfortable there, but also the complete other side of that is that they're absolutely devastating on the counter attack. So you don't want to get sucked in too far, or they'll just pick you off and just work around you and score. So that's what I mean about how they seem like it's such a well-equipped team to do damage to Celtic. It's not that, well, it's also that they're of far greater quality than Celtic, of course they are, because they've got far more money and the highest paid manager, at the last count, the highest paid manager in the world.
In real football?
Yeah, in real football, aside from Saudi Arabia and all that, Simeone was the highest paid the last I checked. So they've got all these things, they've got all these resources, and Celtic clearly don't have any of that, but they seem very well set up to be a very big problem for Celtic. All we can really hope for, I think it'd be disingenuous of us to sit here and think, but we can go out there and do them. I think the best we can hope for is for Celtic to just pull off an absolute shock, for it all to just go our way.
Take the chances, that's key.
Be brave, be patient, be comfortable on the ball, wait for chances. Don't snatch at things, because there's a couple of players that are maybe getting into the trying too hard territory, like and all that, but won't start the game. But we need to be patient and wait for opportunities and just hope that things really, really fall for Celtic, because there's no getting away from it. They are by far the better team. So I don't think it's absolutely impossible, but it's going to be a very, very difficult night. I just hope we don't concede early and then it all goes to absolute pieces is what I'm hoping for, really.
Jamie. You're just about to finish up here now?
Yes, I'm carry on, mate.
Jamie.
Yes.
Right. Is this all going in?
Yeah, it's all going in. I'm not editing this out. Carry on, Melly.
Jamie.
Yes.
You're moaning about away allocations and that, and
I'm not moaning, mate. I'm the host of the podcast.
We're all having a big moan about a bit worried about Atletico Madrid, but you forget something.
What?
Hibs v Celtic this weekend.
Oh,
can't even watch it.
Can't watch it. Brilliant, eh?
Scottish football.
The league that hates itself strikes again. You can't even watch that game. We'll be at it though. We'll obviously have the podcast. We're going to cobble together something else. Final thought. the Atletico Madrid game, Celtic. You have been told, you've been warned about the singing, about the atmosphere. None of your crap, none of your the acoustic, breathy John Lewis music. Passion, tempo, aggression, tsunami. We want the place to become a cauldron. We don't want it to be friendly. We want it to be hateful and scary and exciting, and we want fireworks. And on that bombshell, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you so much for watching us. Join us on Patreon. Help us hit that target. Join us on YouTube if you want to get rid of the ads. Thanks for watching and listening. See you next week.